Welcome to JLive. I'm JArt's Executive Director, Laura Mandel, and it's great to be with you for JLive. JLive is our series of virtual cultural experiences that bring us together to explore and celebrate the diverse world of Jewish art, culture, and creative expression. We're bringing you bite-sized conversations with the best Boston area talent. Today, I'm excited to be with Jessica Nora, an artist who uses painting, sculpture, and wire work to talk about invisible illnesses, spirituality, equity in a lot of ways, and so much more. And you can actually see one of her animal paintings right behind her. If you have questions during our conversation, please share them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ask as many of them as time allows. So thank you for being here, Jessica.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we got to meet. I will tell everyone, we first met when she submitted an application for the gallery at Mayim Chaim, and I was struck by some of her work, so I thought it would be fun to have a conversation. So tell us a little bit about your artistic process and what you do.
Happily. So my artistic process is an interesting one in that it changes a lot. And I find that a lot of different modes of my art tend to have different things that bring me there. I'm a big fan of anybody can and should create. I am also a trained art therapist in addition to being an artist. And with that comes a really core belief for me that art not only is healing, but really can help us communicate with each other and also with ourselves. And so a lot of the time, I don't even know why I'm making the art until I've made it. And that's how a lot of these projects got started. So I'm excited to talk about a few of these avenues with you so we can get a little more into each one.
Awesome, I love it. So, because this is a Jewish segment, I thought I would start us off with some of your keypots, which I think are really an interesting story and beautifully crafted. And I'm excited to see you create one with us. So tell us more and show us.
Great. So I think the best way to show starting off, I think, would be we have a slide available with some pictures of some kippot. So if we could bring that up. I started this process when I found that I was really wanting something to touch to my own spirituality. And I was having a really hard time finding a kippot that felt personal to me, that felt that I, as someone who presents and identifies as femme, really connect to. So I started making kippot for female and non-binary identifying folks, and men if they want, but really particularly those who are looking for that femme connection with their spirituality and to be able to bring that in. And so I began making a few different types of kippot and use them with family and in personal family events such as my cousin's bat mitzvah, and things such as that. So it's been fun. Some of them are easy to make and could be made with at home with pretty limited supplies. Some are a little more difficult and intricate, and I sell those, so those people don't have to make them themselves. But I really like being able to have that variety.
So I love that you said some of these could be made at home. I know you were excited to show us how you do it. Can you show us some of the materials and kind of give us a little tutorial on how we might think about doing this at home?
Absolutely. So, thank you. So I usually get started, not all of them have this, but I like to get started for a lot of them, with a gold hoop, a simple gold hoop. It really helps keep the size, and it makes it a lot more simple than something that starts without a loop, although I have a smaller loop than I made there. But those can be more difficult.
It's really cool.
So one that I'll be playing with today is this. You can get the beads to move a little bit. But this is a style I really like because It's easy for really anyone to do. It's fun, it's playful, and it leaves a lot of room for expression. And for me, that's important. So today I'll be starting with my gold hoop, some black wire, and some colorful beads. And you can really, this I get on Amazon, though I try not to support Amazon. Wire and beads are really available at any craft store. A lot of them will have hoops like this as well.
I have to admit, I use that exact same hoop for mobiles that I make out of paper crayons.
That's great. Yeah, they're so versatile. I've used them for a few different projects, but I have to say the Keycoat are my favorite ones. And you really just get started by, well, once the wire is accessible, by cutting a piece of wire and going to, oh, I made the same mistake I did the first time. Hold on. There we go.
Tricky wire.
Tricky wire, apparently. But taking a piece of wire, you can just tie it on to one spot, cut a long-ish piece.
And just so everyone knows, always use wire cutters to cut wire. Don't use scissors, you'll ruin them.
Cutters are very necessary. Thank you so much for pointing that out. And you can use any curved surface. I use my knee. But you can really use any curved surface to get that base curve that you're just going to want to have so it fits well on the head. But honestly, if they're flat, it's fine. You can use a bobby pin. And I just put a few beads on as I go. Here, as they scatter a little bit.
Great. So Jessica noted to me that she's quite adept at this and can do it while talking, like I know some people often knit. So I said, let's have you make one while we talk, and then hopefully she's going to check in with us as we go so you guys can see the progress, and at the end have a final piece, which is pretty cool. So while you're beading that, it actually directs us right to the idea of knitting, because like I said, I love that you can bead the way some people knit during conversations. Right. And what really drew me to your work initially were these big, beautiful knit pieces that you created that you call Aftermath. Can you tell us a little bit about those pieces?
Absolutely. So why don't we pull up the Aftermath slide as well so everyone can get a visual. So Aftermath is a series that I began halfway through my senior year as my senior thesis. And it is, I've always had a connection of really working through mental health issues through art. And a lot of art for me was working through some of my personal trauma, some of my medical trauma. And Aftermath was really a series about, I talked to a lot of people about their own traumatic stories, and I found that the emotional aftermath was really common when all our stories of what our trauma was pretty different. So these pieces were a lot about that emotional aftermath and both the difficult emotions and how to heal can take place, and how that's really similar in a lot of trauma survivors, no matter what the trauma is. So that's a lot of what these pieces are about, of that difficult healing process that helps you grow from difficult, traumatic, and traumatic times.
I mean, I think the pieces are just so beautiful and engaging, and that they draw you in. I'm curious, are there either specific stories to the different shapes, or how did you kind of come to those shapes?
So each piece is labeled Aftermath and a letter, and that's not an accident. A lot of them are initials. Each piece was inspired by one individual's story. It's not public who those individuals are or what the story is. But I went into the metal shop to create the base metal structures for each piece, thinking about a particular person's experience and story that they had spoken to me. And they that with their consent to be a part of this project.
I think that's so beautiful. What an incredible way to show somebody's experience, but in such an anonymous way.
Right. And I think it did connect my sculpture major and my art therapy minor, to be able to express through my own art processing trauma as well. And that was very important to me. It's so important for all types of therapists to make sure they aren't having vicarious trauma through their clients. And so processing is a big part of how that can be avoided.
Absolutely. Wow.
I learned my own processing needs.
Yeah, that's pretty beautiful. So now most recently, I know you've been working on this project that you call Tzedek Tirdof. And I know what that means, but would you tell us about it, what that means, what it comes from?
Absolutely. So Tzedek Tirdof, one of my absolute favorite Jewish phrases, translate to justice shall you pursue. And it has been a big part of my own Jewish spirituality since when I was in high school. I had a teacher who was a big part of my spiritual influence, growing up. And he always asked us questions that generally weren't talked about. He was, unfortunately, he has since passed away. He was a amazing judge, and he helped us really talk about the importance of noticing biases that we don't realize we have, and really anti-racism work before it was widely known, at least in the white community. Very behind. But so,
would you show us this painting that sort of launched this whole thing? Oh, I'll let you do your cutting first.
I'm sorry, I was pausing because I had to put on a new wire.
Perfect. Process check.
Yes. See how they move? And they get more stuck in place as more wires are put on.
Beautiful.
But yes, so that came with a lot of influence as well, being surrounded by some amazing Black artists that I was in a creative chat with while I was painting, because I'm in part of this amazing group called the Creative Zone that has a lot of amazing artists that are brought together, and they were hosting a virtual event led by a lot of Black artists. So I was very inspired by that as well. And that led me to create this piece. I'll show again all my pictures. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yep. I love that on the screen share you can see all the different pieces, but in the real piece, I hope you can all see the texture. It's really rich and deep on it. And I have to admit, Jessica, the first time I saw this piece, I didn't actually notice the word Tzedek Tirdof first. And then after you started talking about it, I noticed it. And I think that combination is really beautiful. I'm curious, when you were working with this group of Black artists, how did they respond to that?
I wasn't really sharing my art in that group as much because the focus just wasn't on, those of us who were white in the group were more focused on creating in response than showing our work. But I showed it to them afterwards a bit more. And there was a lot of excitement. which I really appreciated. And that really led me to see, well, if this particular piece is really speaking to people, it's something that I want to put out there as much as I can, but in a way that really supports the community it is meant to honor. So I've been doing fundraising efforts with magnets and stickers, some fun stuff, to raise money for Black-owned relief funds and other Black-owned organizations that support Black Lives Matter. But especially, I think it's so important for us as Jews to really be vocal about this movement and really be looking at what we can contribute for many reasons. One reason is that big focus of Tzedek Tirdof, justice, justice, shall you pursue, it's a lot of Jews really consider it our duty to work on creating justice in this world, which currently there's lacking a lot of, and as well as to honor our fellow Jews of color. Is a big issue in the Jewish community to make sure that our Jews of color, especially Black Jews, know that we have their back and that we will create these spaces where they are welcome and safe. And that's not on them to feel welcome and safe. That's on us to make sure we create those spaces and do things to prove that these spaces are welcoming. It's our job to really take that extra step and make sure we are, this safe space we think are creating is truly welcoming to all Jews. So that's really what I've been focusing on sharing the word about and raising some money for with this current project.
I think it's great how visible you've made that connection. And if you want to share the link with everybody in the chat, that would be great. So you can all look at her work after the fact. That's great. So, okay, now I've asked you to do two things at once. Once you put that in the chat, will you show us the status update on this kippot we're working on?
Yes, I will say.
Awesome.
Put it aside while I was talking about that one. But that is now in the chat.
Beautiful.
So it's pretty similar to where we were before. But you can start to see as the wires are moving within each other, you can select where you want each bead to be. So that's, it does take a little longer than the session time.
Absolutely. But you've given us a great base idea here. And I know if any of you are inspired, I'm sure Jessica will happily answer questions after the fact.
Absolutely, happily.
Yeah.
And you can start to see how these wire movements and the beads eventually lead to this, where there's a little movement and a lot of, let's see if you can see it better like this. But a lot of that wire tangle.
Beautiful.
So that's
great.
That this will end up as.
That's great. Well, thank you for showing us. We'll have to get some more of your photos after the fact and share them, but that's wonderful. So, all right, we are amazingly about out of time, but I know for 1 second you've been working on these animal paintings. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that before we sign off?
Sure. So a lot of my current work before my really current project is this animal series. And the series is really about using animals to express raw emotion and to look at a combination of raw emotion, and typically a lot of them have backgrounds that are either more textured and harsh or more typically feminine, floral, really showing how how strength can come from emotions. Because when you look at an animal in the wild and you see that raw emotion, you're the one who's scared, There's always strength in that emotion. And so I really like using these animals to talk about the strength emotion can give us. And so
That's beautiful.
about.
That's beautiful. And I love lions, so I love the painting behind you.
There's a lot of lions in the series. I must say I'm a big fan of big cats as well.
Wonderful. A whole other conversation for a whole other day.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jessica. This has been so wonderful. For all of you out there, I would be remiss if I did not remind you that the next installments of JLive are this coming Monday, July 20th. We have community artist, arts educator, and frequent J-Arts collaborator, Takova Speeder. Up, we have on Tuesday, July 21st, Yoni Batat, a multi-instrumentalist who's worked with us many times. You may recall him from Beyond Bubby's Kitchen, where he's been a wandering minstrel from time to time, and just a great J-Arts friend. And then on Friday, July 24th, we have Chef Michael Leviton, who you might recall from Lumiere. He is the chair of our Taste of Israel food program at J-Arts, and he will be joining us. And of course, last but not least, as the J-Arts tagline says, let culture connect us. To make this possible, we rely on generous community support like yours, and thank you all for supporting us over the last months and years. If you like what you're seeing, please consider donating in the chat link that is in the chat function. So thank you, Jessica, so much. This has been so much fun to be with you.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. And we hope to see you at future J-Lives. Until then, I hope you'll all grab some wire and make a kippah. Awesome.
Thank you. Bye.